Let's talk about one of the most complicated standoffs in the world, the one between the United States and Iran. It's a really long story, full of revolution, a whole lot of mistrust, and a huge nuclear deal that was celebrated one minute and then completely torn apart the next. You see it happen over and over again. Negotiations start, there's a glimmer of hope, and then they just collapse. So that brings us to the big question, right? Why is this conflict so incredibly difficult to solve? What is it that keeps these two nations locked in what feels like an endless cycle of hostility? To really get why today's talks keep failing, you gotta go back, way back. The deep mistrust between the US and Iran didn't just pop up overnight. It was forged decades ago in some pretty earth-shattering events. Okay, so it all really kicks off in 1979. First, the Iranian Revolution topples the Shah, who was a big US ally, and an intensely anti-American government takes power. Then, just a few months later, the Iran hostage crisis. American diplomats were held for 444 days. That one event just shattered any possibility of trust for generations. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and the conflict gets a new focus: Iran's nuclear program, which triggers some seriously crippling sanctions from the US. For years, the tension just kept ratcheting up. It honestly looked like a major conflict was right around the corner. But then, in 2015, something pretty incredible happened. Diplomacy actually managed to pull off what a lot of people thought was impossible. And that something was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA. You probably know it as the Iran nuclear deal. It was this huge diplomatic win led by the Obama administration that brought Iran and 6 major world powers to the table to try and defuse the whole nuclear crisis. So what was the deal, really? Well, at its heart, it was a classic trade-off. Iran agreed to seriously scale back its nuclear program and let international inspectors come in and verify everything. And in return, the US and other world powers agreed to lift the economic sanctions that were just crushing Iran's economy. For a minute there, it really seemed like stability was within reach. But you know how these things can go. That stability was really short-lived. This deal, which took years of painstaking negotiation to put together, was about to come crashing down, and it happened fast. The year was 2018. And that's when a single decision completely unraveled the whole agreement and sent tensions skyrocketing all over again. President Donald Trump called the deal a terrible agreement. And with that, he unilaterally pulled the United States right out of it. Just like that. The entire diplomatic framework that was holding this fragile piece together, it was gone. And after pulling out, the US didn't just go back to the old sanctions. Nope. It launched what it called a maximum pressure campaign. We're talking even harsher economic penalties, all designed to basically cripple the Iranian regime. The result? The whole region became a powder keg. Tensions shot up almost immediately. You had attacks on oil tankers, military drones getting shot down, and it all built up to that shocking US drone strike in 2020 that killed a top Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani. Seriously, the two countries came dangerously close to an all-out war. So, fast forward, the Biden administration comes into office, and there's this renewed push for diplomacy. Negotiators get back to the table to see if they can somehow revive the nuclear deal. But they almost immediately slammed into a very familiar and seemingly unsolvable problem. It all boils down to this classic who goes first problem. The US says, hey, Iran, you have to undo all the nuclear progress you made before we do anything. But Iran's position is, no way. The US has to lift all those sanctions first to prove they're serious. It's a total standoff. Neither side trusts the other enough to make the first move. But here's the thing. This isn't just a two-player game between Washington and Tehran. To really understand the whole picture, you have to bring in another critical player in the region, one whose security concerns add a massive layer of complexity to any potential agreement. For Israel, a nuclear-capable Iran isn't just a strategic problem. It's viewed as a threat to their very existence. They've always been against the deal and have allegedly taken matters into their own hands with covert ops. We're talking sophisticated cyber attacks like the Stuxnet virus that damaged Iran's nuclear facilities, and even targeted actions against Iranian scientists. On top of that, Israel is constantly pressuring the US to keep a tough stance, which makes any kind of diplomatic compromise that much harder. So when you put all these pieces together, the history, the broken deal, the regional politics, a pretty clear picture emerges of why this conflict just feels so permanent. Let's break down the main barriers one by one. When you really look at what's blocking the path forward, it kind of comes down to four massive roadblocks. First, you've got that wall of deep historical mistrust we talked about. Then there's that fundamental deadlock, that who goes first problem. You also have the shifting domestic politics in both countries, where a new leader or a new faction can just throw years of progress out the window. And finally, you have that immense regional pressure, especially from key players like Israel. And all of that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? With so many powerful forces constantly pushing them apart, is a real, lasting agreement between the US and Iran even possible? Or is this just a forever conflict, destined to be managed but never truly solved?